Toto. I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Still think we're not in the end times? Get ready. Well, it's another day in our quarantine, stay-at-home, house arrest shutdown. Even the president now is touting the party line that we have to keep everything at a slow standstill. This is the only way we're going to defeat this enemy. Survey says, wrong, but thanks for playing. No, let me tell you how you beat a virus. Number one, either God divinely intervenes and miraculously removes it, or it runs its course. And somehow, I think the president, on the one hand, he is under the pressure to protect the American people, and he concerned that every death, every facet of this virus being blamed on him. And we certainly know that Nancy Botox Pelosi, Chuck E. Cheese Schumer, and the vermin in the lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream media, including Faux Pas News, formerly known as Fox News, are more than happy to oblige that narrative. At the same time, I think some of his economic gurus and he have decided that going into the summer to catapult into the 2020 election cycle of the fall, if he could bring everything to a grinding halt now. I mean, unemployment numbers now hit over 6 million. People are without jobs. They are concerned. Some cases outright scared. Hey, it's a great way to put through another $2 trillion stimulus package because after all, this will give us infrastructure and we can build roads and airports and all kinds of stuff. None of which cures COVID-19, by the way. Just thought I'd throw that out there. But we've got the American people now understanding we need an influx and infusion of cash. What's going to happen? And at some point, they're going to make the determination to turn the country back on, and in this so-called V effect, crashing down, it's going to shoot back to life bigger, badder than ever before, and that what the political opposition meant to gain by this coronavirus and shutting the country down, creating fear, panic, and hysteria to be blamed on the president and the economic hardship and to manufacture a recession to hurt the president. I think the president and his team is gambling on that this thing will shoot back when they decide to flip the switch and turn the economy back on. And we are going to be rocking and rolling going into the fall, and he will just decimate whoever the Democratic challenger ends up being. But there's so much hysteria. There is so much fear and panic. People not only fearful of losing their jobs, but literally fearful of losing their lives. And you've got a bunch of little wannabe dictators that call themselves state governors running around with their own little medical teams of experts. And, you know, it's like each one of these little wannabe dictators has their own, you know, Joseph Goebbels in charge of propaganda and disinformation, and it's just absolutely mind-boggling that we're all watching this. So I want to ask, before we really get into this, a few questions. And I want to logically take a look at facts, or in this case, stats. The flu. We've been living with it literally for decades. Since October 2019 through April the 1st, 2020, these are the flu stats in the United States for this flu season. 54 million have tested positive for influenza, the flu. Gee, and that's even with a vaccine. 730,000 people have been hospitalized. 62,000 people have sadly died. Yet consider, with 54 million testing positive, 730,000 hospitalized, 62,000 dead, no quarantine, no shutdown, no overwhelmed hospitals. On the flip side, you have countries that have been in total, complete lockdown now for weeks going into months, i.e., Italy. Yet, their curve hasn't flattened. Why? Could there be extenuating circumstances like people there are really old and they're dying, and Corona is sadly giving them that final push? In fact, it was just a couple of years ago, 2017, that the Italian government commissioned an actual medical investigation into why the death rate among the elderly was so high. And here's what they came back with, because it was higher than anywhere else in the world. And here's what their professional experts came back with. They're old. That was it. They're old. Japan, other than they have now restricted international travel, has really done little to nothing to actually shut their country down. Stores are all open, restaurants are all open, people are going to work, factories have not shut down. Their cases and their mortality rates, etc., about even with just about everybody else, yet no fear and panic among the people. Why? Well, first of all, it's not being focused on 24/7 on their news. It's mentioned in the news, kind of like back in December, we started hearing reports about, coronavirus over in China, and most people went in one ear and out the other, even through January, especially among the Democrats who were desperately trying to impeach the president. It wasn't all that important to them then. Countries like Sweden, done nothing really to shut anything down or create mass hysteria. Here, stateside, we've gone full-blown insane. Absolutely insane. Governor Mike DeWine, the little weasel-eyed runt from Ohio, was the first one to do shutdown. At first, people were like, oh, well, monkey see, monkey do. Then California joined him. Then Andrew Cuomo over in New York. And each one of these guys had to start having their own daily press briefings and even started gaining some national media attention. DeWine had never been this popular. Even his own wife couldn't remember his name. And then all of a sudden, here he is on the TV every night. People in Ohio didn't even know the name of their governor. That's how irrelevant, insignificant he was, and now all of a sudden he's got national attention, and now even he's going to close the churches. Where do these governors get off thinking they can override the Constitution? This is going to be a battle fought in the Supreme Court. It won't happen now because everybody's caught up in the hysteria and the delusion of the moment. But at some point we will get through this, and this will get challenged in the U.S. Supreme Court. A church has a constitutionally protected right to meet. And I'm sorry, a governor or a mayor or a little deputy dog sheriff doesn't have the authority or the jurisdiction to override that. Period. That would be the same thing as a mayor coming out and saying, we're so worried because of the coronavirus that people are just going to go crazy and take the law into their own hands. I demand every legally owned gun be turned in now. A local municipality, a state municipality, does not have the jurisdiction or the authority to override the federal United States Constitution. That said, these governors, not only do they have this incredible attention and this incredible ability now to rule and dictate to their states like their rogue little personal empires, but we need to face some facts here. Number one, there's an economic boom going on. And I'm not just talking about for certain individuals on Wall Street. I'm talking about for governors. Now, while Mayor Bill de Blasio and Governor Cuomo were basically disengaged in the beginning of what was going on with Corona, once they decided, to get on board, and put their windbreakers on and have press briefings and, talk about ventilators and Trump hasn't given us enough masks, Even the New York Times has started doing some digging and saying, you know, Mr. Governor Cuomo, you gutted your state's Medicare system. You didn't order beds. You didn't order ventilators and masks when you had the opportunity. Now you want to blame Trump. But what's happening now? And Governor DeWine tipped his hand yesterday in his press briefing, and most people don't watch DeWine's press briefings because, to be quite honest, it's more exciting to watch paint dry or dandelions go from yellow to brown than listen to Mike DeWine talk. You know, I am Dr. Acton here, and we're going... Oh, shut up. In the transcript of his press briefing, you know, he's so excited that the federal government, here it is, going to underwrite 75% of what the state of Ohio is doing in this battle against Corona and helping it recover. So in other words, DeWine's got enough in his budget, because Ohio does pretty well because of the oil industry. He's got enough surplus in his budget that he can keep the state shut down indefinitely, and the state will be fine because the feds will underwrite 75% of what he's doing. And DeWine has never been a small business guy to begin with. He's always kind of looked down on small business. So, you know, there you go. He doesn't care that you aren't working, that you can't pay your bills, that you can't make it. That's all irrelevant. So you have these governors now that all of a sudden they have got an influx of cash like they've never had before. How convenient for the governors of states like Illinois, California, Connecticut, New York, who were literally on the verges of bankruptcy. Bum, ba-dum, bum. And by the way, the more cases they have, the more money they get. And the more deaths there are, especially if they're at a epicenter, a hotbed of the outbreak, do the math. That's why the governor of Connecticut can tweet out that an infant that died in their state from complications related to, linked to Corona. Well, what does that mean? Did the child have it and die from it? Or did the child have some other birth defect, sickness issues, and Corona was a part of it? See, the disingenuous misleading of the public, making you think now that every death that happens in the U.S. is Corona. There is an economic reason why this narrative continues to be pushed. We've seen the rollout of socialism. Bankrupt states are being infused with money like never before. We've got the largest distribution, or I should say redistribution, of wealth in this country from the American taxpayers to the extreme billionaire corporatists, and hey, we get $1,200 in exchange for it. So there's an economic advantage to this continuing. There's a control advantage. Again, is your business, is what you do, is it essential?
Come with me.
I am an essential worker.
Essential worker.
Yes. I work for Oskar Schindler.
Essential worker for Oskar Schindler.
One-armed Jew.
Yes.
Yes.
Twice as useless.
I work for Oskar Schindler.
Danke, look at the snow. Look at the snow. Look at the snow.
In this control grab, we're also seeing it is a test of constitutional power versus constitutional rights. In other words, do the governors have the right to do what they're doing? And who's going to challenge them in court and take it before the Supreme Court? There's also a test going on now between the president and the governors. You have the president that said, we've repealed the Johnson Act. In other words, pastors and pulpits may speak freely about their political views. Andrew Cuomo said, no, they can't, and he's threatened closure of churches if they do. There's also control about regulating and tracking people. Did you see that Denmark wants to start placing chips in people so they know where they are, especially if they have a contagion in their system? Can you say Book of Revelation, end time, rapture, apocalypse, we're right on the doorstep? You need to start getting ready for that. So there's an economic advantage, there's a control issue at play here. Now, how does all this work? How do they build something that really is the flu? This is the corona flu. And how have they got everybody bat-crap crazy and scared to death? Well, they take a problem, they magnify the fear, they fuel the panic with 24-hour news coverage, they skew the stats, they juke the stats, so that finally the people are so scared they will welcome, and this is the danger, any solution. Just please let me kind of get back to normal. Let me please go back to Starbucks. Let me please go hang out at GameStop. Let me please go back to the movies. Let me please go back to ball games and concerts. Please let me go back to feeling normal again. I don't care that you guys are already reading my emails and my texts and listening to all my phone calls. I gave all that away after 9/11. Right now, I just want to be safe. And if you got to chip me to do that, if you've got to regulate the size of churches to do that, if you need my guns because you're worried that, we might kill each other in a pandemic panic, if you got to do that, I'm listening to my adult children seemingly have no problem with some of this socialistic idealism that's now being propagated as solutions. In the words of Dorothy, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. And America, post-corona, is going to be far different than what it just was a month ago. Hey, that's it for this little rant. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Hey, give us a thumbs up if you would, and a like. That helps us. Help us get our algorithm up and our exposure up by posting links to this video to your social media platforms of choice. Make sure you're a subscriber to the channel. Smack the bell to get notification of my rants. So make sure you have clicked the word all to get notification of all of my rants.